The village that time forgot. Late one August afternoon, Mark, Jessica, Olivia, and Tyler were poring over a collection of old road maps in a musty hostel lounge in Eastern Europe. The group had been backpacking through small, off-the-beaten-path towns, seeking authentic experiences that no typical travel brochure could offer. Their quest for hidden gems and lesser-known locales had led them to countless adventures, and now it seemed they were on the cusp of yet another. Jessica ran her fingertips over a yellowed sheet in an out-of-print travel guide that Mark had purchased at a flea market. On it, next to a winding river, was a tiny dot labeled Mirova, a name she had never heard before. An accompanying note claimed, a vibrant village known for its orchard festivals and warm hospitality. Intrigued, she flipped to the back pages of the book, searching for more details, but found only a single paragraph. The village was said to be nestled in a remote valley, reachable by an old mountain road. Yet the handful of local people the group had asked that day had all shaken their heads. None recognized the place called Mirova. "I don't understand," Tyler said, frowning. "How can a village that supposedly existed only a few decades ago just disappear from everyone's memory?" "We've stumbled on strange things before," Olivia offered, shrugging. She brushed a lock of dark hair behind her ear and examined the map more closely. But an entire community? Erased from local knowledge? Mark raised his eyebrows in excitement. "We have to check it out. If it really exists, or existed, this might be one of those once-in-a-lifetime mysteries. Who knows what we'll find?" A ripple of both enthusiasm and unease passed through the group. They decided to rent an SUV in the nearest town and drive east, guided only by the tattered travel guide and a sense of youthful daring. None of them anticipated that the journey would soon plunge them into a dark tapestry of curses, shadowy experiments, and the unsettling fate of an entire village that vanished in a single night. The road toward Mirova grew increasingly remote, winding around steep hillsides and plunging into valleys where fog clung to the treetops. Occasionally, they passed weathered signs pointing to other villages, none of which appeared on their modern GPS map. It was as if they had slipped into a hidden realm that digital technology had forgotten. What if Mirova is just a misprint? Jessica wondered aloud, scanning the dense forest outside her window. Old guidebooks can be really inaccurate. "But it's marked clearly," Olivia countered, tapping the page. "And there are older references here, too, orchard festivals, a population count, even a mention of a local crafts market." Tyler was driving, and his knuckles whitened as the gravel road narrowed. "I just hope our SUV can handle this. We haven't seen another car for miles." They continued like this for hours. The sun began its slow descent behind the looming mountains, casting golden beams through the canopy of leaves overhead. Every now and then, the path was so overgrown it felt more like a forgotten logging trail than a proper road. Finally, just as daylight started to fade, a barely legible wooden sign came into view. The paint was chipped, and the letters were faded, but they could still make out the word. They parked the SUV and stepped onto a patch of overgrown ground. Before them stretched a small valley cradled by low rolling hills. From a distance, they saw the silhouettes of what looked like houses. Yet the entire scene was silent, eerily so. No birds chirped, no rustling came from the underbrush. It was as if every living creature had abandoned the place. Approaching the first structure, they saw that it had once been a wooden cottage, now collapsed in on itself. Weeds and vines had reclaimed most of it, and the roof had caved in. A few steps further revealed more cottages, similarly ruined. The entire village seemed to be a graveyard of timber and stone. "This is beyond eerie," Jessica whispered, shining her flashlight on a house whose windows were broken. Inside, there was only darkness and piled debris. "How long do you think it's been like this?" "It must be decades," Mark replied, running a finger along a moss-coated fence post. The wood crumbled at his touch, and he pulled his hand away in alarm. "It's completely rotted." Tyler walked ahead, shining his flashlight at a battered sign over what looked like a shop entrance. The lettering was still barely legible: Bakery, Fresh Bread Daily. The wind, if there was any, didn't stir so much as a leaf. It felt like time had been frozen, or forcibly stopped. Venturing deeper into the village, they found a central square, an empty fountain surrounded by stone benches that had cracked under years of neglect. The dried fountain's basin was choked with decaying leaves and brambles. An old lamppost stood at a crooked angle, its glass shattered. In the gloom, Olivia caught sight of a series of tattered posters pinned to a notice board. She carefully peeled one off, revealing a faded announcement for an orchard festival set to take place in September 1994, almost 30 years ago. Another poster advertised a local crafts fair, also dated 1994. Yet the paper looked as though it had been weathering the elements for a century. This place was supposed to be here, alive, less than 3 decades ago, Olivia said, shaking her head. So why does it look like it's been abandoned for 100 years? No one could answer. A hush fell over them, and their own footsteps echoed disconcertingly through the empty square. A clue in the ruins. They decided to split up briefly to explore more efficiently. Jessica and Tyler went to investigate a large building at the edge of the square, perhaps the village hall or a school, while Mark and Olivia examined a cluster of smaller homes. Inside one of these homes, Mark and Olivia found a bizarre tableau, dishes still set on a dining table, now caked with grime and dust. A child's doll lay on the floor, its hair discolored by time. Cabinets were left half open, as though someone had been in the midst of preparing a meal and then vanished. Dust motes hung like spirits in the stale air. On a small mantel above the fireplace, Olivia spotted a photograph in a cracked frame, a family of 4 standing outside that very house. Their faces, though smiling, were now nearly bleached to white by the sun and ravages of age. Mark reached for the photo, only to recoil when the glass frame shattered at his touch, sending shards to the floor. "Careful," Olivia said softly, her eyes scanning the rest of the room. "It's like everyone just left, or disappeared, all at once." They moved into a side room and discovered an old wooden dresser. Inside one of its drawers was a scattering of letters and documents. Most were mundane, a grocery list, a personal note about a neighbor's birthday. But one letter caught their attention. It was sealed but never sent. The writing on the envelope read, "To whom it may concern." Inside, the letter began ominously, "If anyone finds this, know that we had no choice. We were told to comply, but the rumors are growing worse. People are falling ill at night, some vanish, and the orchard has begun to wither. This is not just a plague. Something else is happening here." The letter ended abruptly, ink scrawled downward in what looked like panic. Olivia and Mark exchanged troubled looks. Dark discoveries. Meanwhile, Jessica and Tyler pried open the heavy door to the large, ornate building. Though the sign above had faded, the structure's size and style suggested it had once been a combined municipal office and a meeting hall. The foyer they entered was cavernous and shrouded in darkness. High windows, clouded with grime, let in only a sickly gray light. Dust coated every surface, and every footstep echoed back tenfold. Jessica's heart pounded as she passed a row of wooden chairs stacked against the wall. "Feels like we're trespassing in a tomb," she breathed. Tyler caught sight of a metal cabinet by the far wall. "Help me open this," he said, rummaging through his backpack for a small crowbar. After some effort, they pried the door open, the metal squealing in protest. Inside were old town records, typed and handwritten. Jessica carefully pulled them out, flipping through pages that chronicled Mirova's population, tax documents, even birth and death certificates. But as she scrolled forward in the timeline, her eyes widened. In 1993, the population was recorded as 876. A year later, in 1994, the record simply read, "Population, 0." No explanation. No entries about relocation or mass exodus. It was as if someone had deliberately written a single digit, 0, and nothing else. Tyler shone his flashlight on another folder labeled Municipal Concerns. Within it, they found urgent letters addressed to a regional government office. One letter mentioned unexplained illnesses and property damage, another described strange lights over the orchard at night. A final report, dated May 14, 1994, read: "The orchard is nearly destroyed, and a quarter of the villagers have vanished without a trace. We beg of you to send help, scientists, anyone who can explain what's happening. We fear that Mirova is cursed. If you do not act soon, it will be too late for us all." Jessica's pulse raced. Cursed? Or something worse? Whispers of a secret experiment. Reuniting with Mark and Olivia, they shared their findings. The puzzle pieces began to form a disturbing picture. Village records, personal letters, everything pointed to a catastrophic event that struck Mirova in 1994. The orchard, once the pride of the community, had withered and died, and with it came mysterious illnesses, sightings of bizarre lights, and nightly disappearances. By the end of that year, every resident was gone, and the place had been scrubbed from local memory, as though it never existed. As dusk settled over the ruined streets, a heavy sense of dread weighed on the group. They decided to search for the orchard, which the documents implied was central to the curse or experiment. Guided by a faded trail behind the village, they followed an old dirt path lined with gnarled apple trees. The branches were warped, the bark blackened. It looked as if these trees had been struck by plague or burned from the inside out. The orchard opened into a clearing where they found an incongruous sight, a collapsed wooden structure that resembled a temporary lab or station, far from any modern road. Scattered around were rusted metal canisters, shattered glass vials, and odd machinery half buried in the soil. Mark picked up a dented metal clipboard. "Look," he said, pointing to a faded government insignia etched into the corner. Beneath it was a partial title, Department of. The rest was illegible, scratched away. Inside the collapsed structure, they uncovered waterlogged notebooks. On one cover they could read, Project Nightbloom, Phase 3. Even though many pages were smeared with mold, a few lines remained decipherable, references to top-secret contamination protocols, experimental bioagents, and side effects including hallucinations, physical distortion, and mass panic. One final note, dated April 1994, read, "Containment has failed. The orchard shows accelerated decay. Villagers report heightened aggression and insomnia. Several families have gone missing. Recommend immediate closure of Project Nightbloom. We must evacuate or face total." The page ended there, the text trailing into an ink blot. The truth now seemed undeniable. Mirova had been the site of a clandestine experiment, possibly a biological field test. Something had gone terribly wrong, unleashing a catastrophic force that consumed the village in a matter of weeks or months. Whether it was a curse born of science or something more supernatural was unclear. But one fact was evident: every soul in Mirova had vanished, leaving behind only skeletons of buildings and silent accusations scrawled in abandoned documents. A haunting exit. Night had fully settled, and the moon cast long, pale shadows on the orchard's dead trees. The air felt electric, as if brimming with unspoken horror. The four friends exchanged tense glances. They had their answers, at least, partially, but no sense of closure. A dread curiosity tugged at them: had the villagers truly died, or had they become something else? Were their remains hidden somewhere under the orchard soil? Yet none of them dared to stay another moment. The claustrophobic darkness pressed in, and every sound, the snapping of a twig, the scuttling of a small animal, set their nerves on edge. They gathered the documents they could carry, filming everything with their phones to ensure they had proof of this secret tragedy. Then they retraced their steps back to the SUV, the ruins of Mirova looming behind them like a grim testament to a nightmare long buried. Tyler gunned the engine, and they drove away in silence, hearts pounding with residual fear. Even the forest itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief at their departure. Only once they were miles away, headlights illuminating a more well-traveled road, did they speak again. "I can't believe something like that could just be wiped from history," Jessica murmured. "All those families, just gone." Mark stared out the window, the darkness of the pines rushing past. "We have the documents. We have video. We owe it to them, to the truth, to let people know." Aftermath, echoes of Mirova. When they reached the nearest sizable town, the group contacted local authorities. Their story was met with disbelief at first, but the photos, videos, and salvaged documents from Project Nightbloom were impossible to ignore. Investigations were launched, journalists flocked to the ghostly ruins. A swirl of media coverage ensued, filled with sensational headlines: "Vanished village discovered, government experiment gone wrong, the curse of Mirova." Yet as more people tried to access the site, they found a labyrinth of bureaucratic roadblocks. The area was cordoned off under the guise of public safety, and statements from officials remained maddeningly vague. Speculation grew rampant. Some believed that top-ranking officials had orchestrated a cover-up, while others clung to the legend of a centuries-old curse awakened by the orchard's disturbance. Within a month, rumors began circulating that men in hazmat suits had arrived in Mirova under cover of darkness, hauling away the rusted canisters and burying certain structures under tons of earth. The official line was that it was all part of an environmental cleanup to prevent chemical leaks. Whatever the truth, the orchard was systematically destroyed, its dead trees removed by bulldozers and burned in controlled pits. For Mark, Jessica, Olivia, and Tyler, the experience left an indelible mark. They had stepped into a tale of sorrow and conspiracy that tested the boundaries of their courage. Even after mainstream interest waned, they continued to share their story, refusing to let Mirova be forgotten again. In interviews and online forums, they recounted the haunting emptiness of that village square, the frantic scribbles in abandoned letters, and the lethal hush of the orchard that no birds dared to enter. To this day, Mirova stands as a poignant reminder of how entire communities can vanish under the weight of secrecy and darkness. Whether it was a curse conjured by meddling in forces beyond comprehension, or simply the fatal result of an experiment gone wrong, one truth remains unshakable: something catastrophic happened in that valley, and nearly 30 years later, the ghosts of Mirova still linger in the quiet hallways of rotting homes, waiting for anyone brave, or foolish, enough to uncover what truly caused a living, breathing village to vanish in a single night.